My name is Hanson, and I am the Assistant Director at the Mental Health Clinic at Boynton Health. I'm also a psychologist, and I'm going to be spending a few minutes today talking about depression in graduate school and steps that students can take to address that either on their own or with professional help if they need that type of service. And there's a lot of services on campus here that can provide that assistance for students. When we talk about depression and some of these life challenges and this sense of learned helplessness, I like to break that down into different categories of awareness and prevention and early intervention. From the awareness side of things, I encourage students to really think about what they're needing and what they bring to graduate school in the first place, and the different types of experiences, thoughts, ideas, and feelings that may be triggers for them. Some students really have a lot of need to communicate with their advisors on a regular basis. Some students need to balance work and life demands. For some students, I think the challenge is to recognize that they belong in graduate school and just to feel that sense of belonging when they may not have a strong social network or as strong a social network that they had when they were undergraduates. I think oftentimes too for graduate students it can be a real challenge to feel like who you are and what you're doing is good enough. Graduate school is a time of high perfection. It's a time of strong expectations, both external and internal. So recognizing that what you're doing is good enough and is accomplished and is sufficient in terms of both your own expectations and the expectations of your program can sometimes be a real challenge. So coming to terms with that understanding, if those are some of the things that you're wrestling with, I think it'd be a really good point of awareness. I also think it's a good priority to understand what you need in terms of life and work balance. It's not an expectation in my mind that all graduate students should be working constantly, nonstop. Sometimes that's a hard message to internalize. Advisors can be very demanding, courses can be very demanding, juggling assistantships with your own coursework, with family demands can also be very challenging. So recognizing that doing it all and doing it all well is sometimes more than we can ask from ourselves. So having regular times to check in about your distress level or your stress level and how you're coping with the demands of your program, how you're coping with the demands of your life, how you're coping with your own internal expectations to be doing really good work, I think is just really, really important. Taking time out for breaks, to be with family in a kind of competitive environment, taking walks around campus, just taking time during the day, even if it's in your own lab area, just to sit and to pause and to reflect and to attend to your stress levels, I think is a very, very critical part of that awareness piece that can sometimes prevent things from getting much, much worse. I also think it makes a lot of sense to think about what you can control and what you really can't control. There are certain expectations that are a part of graduate school that are program-wide or college-wide or even university-wide, and some of those things are what they are. But within that, there are certain things that I emphasize that you have some control over, how much you're working, who you're talking to, who you're working with, what projects that you're working on. There are different degrees of freedom around that, but oftentimes placing our efforts on the things that we have some autonomy about, some control over, goes a long, long way into enhancing that feeling of agency or efficacy that again can really go a long way to reducing the chances that things like depression and anxiety will emerge. From a prevention standpoint, we talk a lot about self-care, and I mentioned that before about checking in with your stress levels. Just the awareness piece is to know what you need in terms of your stress levels, but self-care might take that a step further in looking at your sleep patterns, how you're eating, the type of exercise that you're getting, how you're resting when you're away from the office, what other things that you're engaged in that provide you with a sense of meaning and purpose. A lot of those things can be very, very strong prevention steps to take from things from getting worse. Taking time to relax, even though there might not feel like good times to relax, can be another big part of that. Organization. I think having a plan and organizing your time, a plan for your progress and your program, even if that happens to change over time, can feel very comforting to know what you're doing and where you're going and what that might look like. Sometimes in graduate school it can be very difficult to think of the next 4 or 5 years of my life and plan that out. And maybe that's too much to ask, but having a sense of that can be very empowering. And if there are people that you need to have in that conversation, finding time to have conversations with those individuals, be they advisors, professors, mentors, or just supportive others, I think can go a long way into reducing some of the anxiety that can come with not having things known or having things planned out as specifically. I think there's also something to be said from the prevention standpoint to remain engaged. Graduate school, unlike being an undergraduate, can be very isolating, and especially when you're doing research and working on your dissertation, that can be an incredibly isolating experience. So finding ways to stay engaged with your program, with classmates, with your research topic, with others that can motivate you and stimulate you, even if they're not in your program, can be very effective ways to, again, prevent things from getting worse or from things to building up. In terms of early intervention, I know in another one of these videos we'll talk about signs and signals that there might be some distress in your life that might need your attention. For me, early intervention is about recognizing those signs and symptoms of possible distress and being willing to talk with somebody about that. I mean, again, from an awareness standpoint, I think it's very helpful to know what your signals of distress are. From an early intervention standpoint, I would say be willing to speak with people about what you're experiencing and what you're noticing. And it can be hard to do that. I think there still is a lot of stigma around talking about mental health issues. That's a very exposed place to be. It can make us feel very vulnerable to talk about those kinds of things. So perhaps starting with a friend or a trusted colleague or a family member that you have that kind of relationship with you, and then being willing to hear their advice and their feedback can be a very, very critical first step into getting the help you might need. Coming into counseling services or to the mental health clinic, even if it's something that you're not sure needs attention, I think those places are very good places to come to just to check in about that. You can get an opinion from a one-time meeting that's even 20 to 30 minutes long at the mental health clinic, just to get some consultation about what we're seeing as a professional. And that's not necessarily a diagnosis or a recommendation, but just to get some ideas about what might be some strategies to employ to start to feel better again. Student Counseling Services has the same type of program where you can come in for a consultation and meet with a professional for a set amount of time. And even getting that one appointment oftentimes is all that students need. The mode number of sessions that both the mental health clinic and Student Counseling Services offer is one. So a lot of students, I think, have a lot of concerns about what's happening for them. They come in, they get some advice, some ideas, and it starts to feel better right away. I think a lot of that has to do with just acknowledging that there's a challenge that you're facing, but having knowledge that somebody is in your corner and supporting you with that challenge, coming up with ideas that have proven to be very helpful for a lot of students, can make a big difference in terms of feeling better somewhat quickly, oftentimes. If ever you're feeling like you're in a place where you're worried about keeping yourself safe, if you're having suicidal thoughts or feelings, I would say that would be one of the red flags to see somebody very, very quickly. And we do have resources on campus that you can utilize in those situations to talk to somebody in person. Even a phone call is available to talk to somebody after hours. And we've got numbers on the mental health website for the university, which is just mentalhealth.umn.edu, with a lot of the information listed on that website, including after hours care. But if you have any feelings like that, that really is a red flag that things are not okay for you. But there is a group of professionals here on campus that are more than willing and happy to talk with you and address those levels of concerns. And they may not be even as abnormal as you think. We know that about 10% of students have suicidal thoughts and feelings. Most do not have plans or intentions to act on those thoughts and feelings. But to us in the field, that really is an indicator that the distress has reached a level where it just feels unmanageable. But working with somebody in those situations can really help to bring about a lot of hope and a lot of belief and faith that things can get better, and then some concrete steps to get to that place where you're feeling like yourself again, and you're feeling more productive again, and you're feeling you can go back and get the work done, which is why you're here, is to be a successful graduate student and move on to the next stage of your career in whatever capacity that might look.